Junior year of college was when I finally had to start making decisions about my major, internships, all that jazz. For college football's junior year, all I have to do is step back onto the field, but there is still a lot of planning involved. This season's team is playing better thanks to new offensive and defensive adjustments, giving you more freedom than ever to make a game plan and bring it onto the field.
And they got it!
But a lot of what's new in College Football 27 comes down to menus and graphs, or what I call the evil god of numbers. It brings good, welcome additions, but man does it feel like I'm spending a lot of my season inside a spreadsheet instead of running a program, or being a college athlete. Before I dig in, let's talk about practice.
We talking about practice.
Good old practice. Can't have a game without practice. So the first place I went was the skills trainer. If you've played Madden, the skills trainer is old hat, but for the last couple of years, college football has sequestered this tutorial away inside of Ultimate Team. No longer. Good teaching tools are essential in any game, and EA has figured out a consistently great version of them with the skills trainer. So I was stoked to finally see it right there on the main menu where it belongs. But Will, you might say, you play this in Madden every year. Shouldn't you know all this stuff already, Chief? I'm glad you asked, imaginary person I just made up. There are a lot of changes to pre-play adjustments this year, especially on defense, and they make for a bit of a learning curve when coming from College Football 26. D-line adjustments, for instance, used to be on the left D-pad. Now they're left on the right stick. That's one example of many. The benefit of this new system is it allows you to do what you want with fewer button presses, but years of muscle memory is hard to undo. I'm glad the skills trainer is here when I need a reminder, or just want to see what's changed. Another addition to learn is timing-based catching, which I'm of two minds about.
Touchdown, Tiger!
See, when you throw a pass in College Football 27, you can press down the button for the type of catch you want, possession, rack, or aggressive. That's not new. What is new is that holding these buttons now gives you a little meter with yellow, green, and red sections. Yellow means the outcome will be based on your pass catcher's catching stats as usual. Red means you ain't catching that ball. Green, though, means you're basically guaranteed a catch, unless you aren't, because the ball is overthrown or knocked away, or your guy doesn't survive the collision. It's incredibly annoying that green can still mean failure, but red can't be saved by good stats. Similar problems occur when you're trying to use this system to make an interception.
It's picked off, and they ruin the drive with a turnover.
Land that sucker in the middle of the green section, and then the ball sails over your head, right into the arms of the receiver. Don't get me wrong, it's great when it works, but when it doesn't, you're like, why is this even here? Worse, it makes yet another part of college football about meters, which is what you spend most of your time off the field staring at anyway.
With that, they grab the lead here in the second half.
Speaking of the field, the presentation, which was already best in class, is somehow better.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
EA has added new traditions, stadiums, trophies, the whole 9 yards, and dynamic weather, which can now change from play to play, is pretty remarkable, and can have a major influence on the game. It's a testament to the team at EA Orlando that they have mostly solved the on-field gameplay and presentation, while managing to add meaningful improvements each and every year. I just wish I was as jazzed about the other stuff. Let's start with Road to Glory. The big additions this year are 3 new positions: tight end, edge rusher, and free safety. I decided to play tight end because EA has spent a lot of time talking about how fun blocking is. Sorry, Joe Throw. You'll have to wait your turn this year. Instead, John Block takes the stage. I spent the points I had to establish future maximum stats to make John both an incredible blocker and a solid receiver with some speed. From there, it was off to my high school career, and you know what? Playing a tight end is fun. Blocking a run and locking up some poor DB is fun. Catching a game-winning pass is fun. But the old problems still raise their ugly head. High school is still my favorite part of Road to Glory because each week gives you new challenges to complete and new things to do. Then you get to college, and it's mostly a spreadsheet. At a higher end school, I didn't see the field much early, and my weeks quickly became about managing my limited energy on things like studying, conditioning, going to practice, and dealing with events that are, disappointingly, entirely told through text and still images. Admittedly, some of this is fun. I like the new practice drills, like the position-specific ones about blocking. There are also some team ones that put the offense down a score and task you with taking the lead within 1 minute, while also leaving as little time on the clock as possible so the other team can't score themselves. There's a certain satisfaction in improving your player and moving up the depth chart. It's just a shame that everything else is a menu or a text conversation between JPEGs of characters that you never share a physical space with. Yeah, it's great that you can track your player's legacy and see where you're likely to be drafted in real time, but Road to Glory is supposed to be an RPG, and you spend most of it filling meters. Off the field, it feels like you barely exist. Your player doesn't really have a personality or friends or a life. He doesn't inhabit a real world that isn't a football field or football adjacent. And there's much more to being a college athlete and college student than text conversations and meter management. I wish the rest of it was as fun as the high school experience is. John Block and Joe Throw remain almighty, but man, living their lives is boring.
Into the end zone. Touchdown, Tigers!
The core appeal of these games is and always will be Dynasty. The big changes here are athletic director expectations, Dynasty points, and how much you're offering that player for NIL rights. AD expectations are what you're expected to do, and how patient your school will be while you do those things. Each school is different. Some want national championships, while another just may want to cream their rival. You get Dynasty points based on things like your conference prestige, stadium atmosphere, and so on. And then you have to spend them to hire staff, upgrade your facilities, offer the players you're trying to recruit NIL deals, keep the ones on your team happy, etc. It's a lot at first, but thankfully I was LSU and I was winning, so I had room to make mistakes. My complaint about Dynasty for the last couple years is that it's mostly recruiting, which is just a bunch of menus that I find boring, and playing games.
It's caught!
This changes that by offering more stuff to manage and a better coaching carousel at the end of each season if you want to move on. There is a strange joy to following your Dynasty blueprint, offering players scholarships, and landing the right recruits. I also love that I can manage my players' individual practice status now. One particular change I'm fond of here is that offering a scholarship doesn't just take up a chunk of your limited recruiting hours per week. Now you gotta spend Dynasty points to offer them an NIL deal too. Offering more than they expect may get their attention, but if you renege on it later, they'll be unhappy. It's an interesting system. The problem is that it's all just more menus to sit through while I look at some JPEGs. I'm sure being a college football coach is a lot of spreadsheet management, but College Football 27's major off-field ads are all spreadsheets, and my reward for sifting through them is to actually play the fun football part.
Touchdown, Tigers!
I like stats as much as the next sports nerd, but the evil god of numbers has laid claim to basically all of college football's off-the-field stuff, and it makes me sad.
Throws it to the right. Finds a man downfield.
Now I suppose we have to talk about Ultimate Team, and it's Ultimate Team, man. You still do challenges and earn card packs and build your team and all that jazz. There's a lot of new stuff around player upgrades this year that allow you more freedom when shaping your guys. An even bigger change called Evos is supposed to be coming down the line, but it isn't available quite yet. That said, none of this changes how I feel about Ultimate Team as a mode, so I'm going to let past Will take this by playing a clip directly from my College Football 26 review.
I fundamentally believe deep in my soul that these modes are predatory. They are designed to trigger the dopamine-producing part of your brains that gambling stimulates in the hope that you will continue to spend money for a chance at a good outcome, and I cannot endorse anything about them.
Speaking of which, we should also talk about the little bugaboo that has hit Road to Glory and Dynasty, the removal of XP sliders. It used to be that you could juice your head coach and player progression to get levels faster. That has been removed, but you can buy coach and player levels for real money now. The nicest thing I can say is that this is a scumbag move that degrades what is otherwise a pretty good game, but hey, the evil god of numbers says the line's gotta go up. That said, EA has already responded to the negative feedback about this and plans to add 3 XP speed settings in an upcoming update, so hopefully these options help alleviate this issue. College Football 27's excellent gameplay, largely smart on-field additions, and best-in-class presentation make this a junior season worth suiting up for. Dynasty and Road to Glory's additions are welcome, but while both modes are better for having them, they also make me feel like I'm never doing much beside living inside of a spreadsheet when off the field. I wish College Football 27 had more space for on-campus life, and some of the monetization stuff is gross. But what's here, especially on the field, is still quite good. This season ain't gonna knock anybody's socks off. This was a good team last year, and it's a good team this year. Just be prepared to worship the evil god of numbers a bit more than usual. I guess you either die a hero or live long enough to operate a spreadsheet.
Touchdown, Tigers! The sure hand's in the end zone, and he has 6.
Reviews director Tom Marks here with Will Borger to talk more about his College Football 27 review. Will has reviewed both of the Maddens and college footballs for the last 2 years for us, and then also just all sorts of other things from action games to rhythm games beyond that. But let's talk for people who don't know. We had a conversation at the end of last year's Madden and college football reviews, but give me a little bit of history for people who are new here. Just like, how long have you been playing these games? You have like a league you play in Madden every year. You're pretty into them when they come around.
Yeah, Madden is probably one of the most played games that I play every year just because of the league. And then college, generally what happens is I play for a while, I play in a league, and then I ultimately have to pick. And I've been in my Madden league longer than my college league, so I have to be like, listen guys, it's been a great season, I'll see you next year. But football games for me are something that started way back. I think the very first one that I remember is NFL Blitz 2003, way back on the PS2. And then that led to NFL 2K, and that led to Madden, and then going back to the various college games and weird stuff like All Pro Football 2K8, I think it is, where they have all these older players that came back in, and then, Mutant Football League and a bunch of stuff. So normally not a sports game guy, but football games somehow, for some way, at the right time came into my life. They sunk their claws in, and they haven't really let go.
So we talked a little bit last year about sort of the annualization of games like this, but this year I want to ask you a little bit. When you go into an annualized game like this, what are you, in college football specifically, like what are you looking for that's new, that's different? What do you hope they do? What do you hope they don't break? Do you have a checklist, or is it mostly just vibes?
It's mostly vibes, because ultimately, like, a lot of very subtle things are going to change, and the games are going to change substantially over the course of their life cycle, even just the year that they're out, right? I remember last year, like, we put something in, I think it was the Madden review for 26, where we're like, yeah, it plays really well. And then, like, halfway through the year, they released a patch that kind of broke the pass rush, and it never really got fixed. Like, they made it a little bit better, but it was never as good as when the review came out. And so when you review a game like this for college or for Madden, you're kind of like, all right, well, what's the same, what's changed, and you're hoping that like the good stuff stays. So like one of the great things about college is the presentation is fantastic, right? It's incredible. And you're hoping like, oh, I hope they, add like a new tradition, or maybe this year they put in like a new stadium, or maybe, last year they added a couple more teams. So you're looking for stuff like that, but you're also like, well, the game plays really well. And I've talked about this in previous reviews, but I think EA has largely solved does the game feel good to play problem? So you hope that stuff stays, but you also hope like little inconsistencies. Like a couple of years ago, there were no-look interceptions, which was a big deal, where a cornerback or a safety could pick the ball off without actually seeing it in the air, which is not a thing that happens. And people were like, man, that's not great, right? So they changed that, and now the DBs have an animation where they will look backwards and try to track the ball, and better DBs will look backwards and worse DBs will not. So you look for stuff like that, and that makes a big difference. One of the things this year for Dynasty is NIL and the Dynasty point system that is new. And, the first few days with the game, I'm like, man, this is a lot. There's a lot of numbers. And then you play and you play and you play and you're like, oh, this isn't bad, right? I understand how this works. But I think the biggest thing for me is to just go into it with an open mind and see, like, how is this gonna work, and try to just kind of accept what the given thing is and go from there. I try not to enter with preconceptions about the previous year, because even those games change so much, like I said, in the year that they release.
So let's talk about score, and score kind of across the history of the series now, because you've given all three of the college football games a 7, but obviously things are changing between them. And then the other thing is, we don't really think about scores as like quote unquote rankings, right? Like each of these games is being reviewed in the context of what's happening at the time, what came before it. It's a moment in time of what you're looking at. Like you said, they change over time, even within their own life cycle. So there's like a lot of factors there that make it unfair to try to say, well, you're saying all of these games are the same because you gave them all a 7. So I guess what I'd like to know is like, what's the context around those numbers? And then just in general, does that paint a clear picture of what's happening with the series, where you feel like it's sort of stagnating? Or has it been making incremental improvements, just not ones that take it from good to great, which is our 7 and our 8?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it, because it's something I think about a lot when I do scores is, what do I think this game is? And I look at our system and I look at the words that describe it, and I read the descriptions, and I'm like, all right, how do I feel? If I had to sum that up in one word, what do I do? And so, every year this has gotten a 7, and every year I think a 7 is a really good score, which is something I really want to emphasize. Like, I think a 7 is really good. When I say that's a good game, like that to me means that is a game that you should consider going to play. I also don't think that these games are stagnant. They change a lot year to year, and often I think those changes are a big improvement. I think if you look at 25 to now, there's so many great changes that they've made. They've done stuff with the defensive adjustments this year and the offensive adjustments this year where you can kind of build custom ones and then take them into games with you. They've made it simpler to make those on the fly, on the field adjustments. I remember just pre-play substitutions was a huge deal, when that came the first time. And then you look at stuff like what they've done with Dynasty, with NIL, and even minor stuff like in Road to Glory this year, you can track your player legacy over the course of their college career and see how are you doing and how that's going to impact your draft stock when you go to the NFL, right? And those are great changes. Stagnation for me would result in a lower number because, and it kind of like a less apt recommendation, right? Where if a game is getting a 7 from me every year, that means the game is making meaningful improvements and it's still good because my expectations are higher, right? If you have 136 teams the first year and then you add 2 more teams, that's better. That's just better. The new presentation upgrades are just better, right? And if nothing changed, you would assume, right, that score would go down because it's just the same thing that you've seen. So to me, it's every year you're like, all right, I've put, several hundred hours into these games. I want to see something new. Is the game still good with the new stuff? But as someone who puts a lot of time into these games, you see that stuff and you feel it. And those little things make a big difference. But they also don't mean that the previous games were bad or that this game has ascended to a higher tier. It's just like oh good, these are the things that we expect for the game to continue to have that standard of this is a very good video game.
Well, Will, I look forward to having another conversation about college football with you 1 year from now. It's a nice tradition at this point. If you want more recent reviews from Will, you just reviewed the last one was Dead or Alive 6 Last Round, so you can go check that one out. Will's got a lot of fighting game expertise as well. And then for a very different type of sports game, if you're in the mood for that, recently reviewed NBA The Run, so you can check that out as well. And for everything else, stick with IGN.